Hey crafters, it is Tuesday, which means it's time for Tutorial Tuesday. Woohoo! So crafters, do you ever come across an idea and maybe you see it online or you hear about it from a friend and you're like totally mind blown. You're like, that is so cool. And then everywhere you look, it suddenly starts popping up and it's not even like it's all the rage or anything. It's just that once you get that idea in your mind, you start seeing it everywhere and you get really excited about it and you just have to try it. Has that ever happened to you? That happens to me a lot in crafting. And that happened recently with this thing called Plarn. I had never heard of it before, but then someone had commented asking us something about a tutorial for Plarn, and then I saw about Plarn on a crochet group I'm a part of on Facebook, and then suddenly it was like everywhere. It was like on Pinterest, and it was on Facebook, and people were asking for Plarn, and I was like, what in the world is Plarn? So I used the trusty Google, and I found out what Plarn is, and it's super cool. Basically, Plarn is plastic bag yarn. So I guess you get the P and the L from plastic, and then you get the arn from yarn, and you just mash them together and make Plarn. So yeah, that is Plarn, and that's what I'm going to teach you how to make today. I've got with me a little bit of Plarn that I've worked on. Now, when you make Plarn, regardless of how your finished product looks, like what I have here, I spun this. But whether you spin it or you decide not to spin it, which really either way is fine, it just depends on what result you're going for. But either way, you're going to start with the same basic idea. And what's really cool about this is you're going to just use plastic. So plastic bags, grocery store bags are a great way, are a great material to make Plarn. I've got some fun blue ones. You can get them in all different colors. I've got a whole big bag here. I've been saving Plarn, or plastic bags to make into Plarn. This is also a trash bag that we'd used for something that it didn't actually have trash in it, so it wasn't actually dirty, but it had holes in it, was all stretched, so it can't really be reused. But you can also use this to make Plarn. I've got another jumbo trash bag here. One of these big black ones, Lana Leaf bags. And what's great about Plarn is with the plastic bags, you might already save them. And my family, we save them, we use them. But a lot of the time we have to check the bags for holes and like, okay, is this good? But with Plarn, you don't have to. With Plarn, you can still use the bags that have holes in them, and I'll get more to that in a little bit, and I'll show you ways that you can use just about every part of the bag. So let's learn how to actually make Plarn. So to make Plarn, really the only things you need are plastic bags. These are some grocery store bags, and like I mentioned before, you can also use jumbo bags. We're just going to use grocery store bags for this tutorial, but then the same idea will apply to the bigger bags. And then you need a pair of scissors. Also, if you want to make your Plarn look like this, where it's a little tighter and it's spun, you're going to want something to spin it with. I've got a drop spindle here. But you don't need the drop spindle. I'll show you the different results. And I'm actually going to try making some spun Plarn and some Plarn that I don't spin and make different things with it. So it's really cool. You can get different results with it. So if you want to make, let me show you this on mine. If you look at this, you can see it's pretty even all the way down. But then every now and then there'll be a thicker spot like this. For me, the beauty of making Plarn is, first off, that it's cheap. You don't have to go out and buy the materials. You just ask your friends, hey, can you save plastic bags for me? And now you can easily make a bunch of yarn. You recycle, so it's good for the environment. And I also like about it that it doesn't have to be perfect. If you want to try for the most consistent Plarn that you can make, then that's totally okay. But for me, I kind of like the haphazard almost feel of Plarn. So when I make Plarn, I'm not super careful when I prepare my bags. And I'll do multiple bags at once. So let me explain. You're going to want to start, I usually do about 3 bags at a time when I cut them. And so you want to just kind of smooth them out, so that way they're laying flat. You may need to tuck in the edges and just lay them flat. And then I'm going to grab my next bag and I'll do the same thing. You might want to kind of stretch out the sides, tuck it under here, and stack them up. Really, the main part that you want to line up is this bottom edge. That'll help you get consistent Plarn if you're doing multiple bags at once. So there's 2 bags, and then let's get this third one ready. Also with Plarn, what's fun is you can make different colors and you can make like your own variegated yarn. So it's really cool. So now I've got my 3 bags here, and I'm just going to kind of line up this edge. But as I said before, I kind of like the haphazard result of Plarn. I think it's kind of fun and playful. So I'm not super careful on how lined up it is, but if you want to be more careful, then by all means, go for it, and you can do 1 bag at a time to get better results. Okay, so I've got my bags lined up, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold them in half this way, because this will make it easier for when I cut. And you can kind of push the air out to the top. And then just fold them in half again to make them a little bit smaller, because it'll make cutting them a lot easier. Just push the air out. So now you've got this nice little folded up wad of plastic bags, and the idea now is we're going to cut it into strips. So I start by cutting off the handles. I think the Publix bag is a little bit taller, so that's why I'm not cutting. So you might be able to see there's a little bit of the handle loop there, so I haven't cut that off yet just because the Publix bag is a little taller, but I am going to hang on to these. I like Plarn because you can reuse just about every part of the bag. I see people throwing away the handles and the bottom parts, but I found ways to reuse them, so why not reuse them and get extra yarn? Or Plarn, I suppose. So then the idea is you just want to cut strips down the bag. You want your strips to be even, and the thickness you cut them will determine how thick your Plarn is. So with this Plarn that I've made here, I did some pretty thin strips. And so it made really thin Plarn, and plus spinning it will make it thinner because it kind of makes everything tighter. So you want to keep that in mind when you cut your Plarn. I'm going to cut this one about 1 inch thick. I just kind of guesstimate, so maybe like 2 fingers thick. And you're just going to go down and cut the bag. And you're going to end up with little strips like this. Move about another inch down. And just make sure your bags stay nice and lined up while you're cutting. And here we are, we're coming to the bottom. Now, as I said, you can still save the bottom parts, or if you want to, you can just cut the last little edge off the bottom and to get the loops and not worry about these scraps. But I'll set those aside with the handles and show you some ways you can reuse them later on. So now you have here a nice big pile of these strips, and you're like, okay, what does that do? So if you grab one of these, I want to start at the ends because the ends can be a little goofy if your bags aren't lined up well. But you can take these and you can unfold them. And when you unfold them, you're going to end up with these nice loops. And so in each of my things, because I had 3 bags here, I'm going to have 3 loops. Here's another one. And here's a final one. So go ahead and unwind all your loops, and then I'll show you the next part. I will mention really quick, I'm doing the top part here. So if you undo a loop and it's not looped together all the way because maybe you were too far at the top of the bag or something like that, don't get rid of it. What I do with my Plarn is if any of these loops tear, I just retie them, because what I found is that the little knots and the reties, you can trim them to make them smaller if you don't like the larger look. And also, I personally don't really mind. So this is kind of an example of what I was talking about. This one, when we go to use it, it might tear in a couple spots. But if it were to tear, let's say we're working with it and it tears right there. Oh no. What I do is I just simply tie a knot right here. Cinch it up nice and gently. And then I just keep using it like that. If you want, you can trim these edges before or after you've made your Plarn, but I usually just leave it like that, and it kind of gives that fun texture to the Plarn. So here's another one, because it was so close to the top of the bag, it's kind of a little goofy looking, but it's still usable, and once you make your project, you won't notice it that much. So let me finish unwinding these. Okay, I keep saying let me finish unwinding these, and I think of new things to show you. So here's an example of one where you can kind of see the bottom of the bag. That's the seam there. So instead of making a loop, it's still fastened together. So you've got lots of options. You can tear this part off and just kind of use this loop here, or if you want, you can slice down the middle to open it up into a loop. For this guy, I'm just going to tear right here, and now I've got a loop. And I just take this extra stuff and I'll put it with my scrap pile over to the side. Okay, this time I should really actually be able to finish unwinding my loops. Alright, you've probably noticed that I've sorted out my Plarn by color. That's because for this Plarn that I'm making, I want to go ahead and have some blue Plarn and I want to have some brown Plarn. But what is cool is you can connect the loops and mix up the colors and get variegated Plarn or multicolored Plarn. But we're going to work with these brown strips from the Publix bag. And another thing I'll throw out there is bags from different places, because they have different, recycled material content and different amounts of plastic in them, they might have different strengths, so you may want to be careful with which bags you mix from which places. So as you can see, I've got a whole bunch of loops here. They're a little bit staticky. And the idea is we're going to connect them, and it's pretty simple. We're going to, I'll move these out of the way so they stop staticking to these ones. And you can start, I'll lay it on the ground so you can see it easily, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not that bad. So I'm going to have a loop there, and I'm going to lay another loop on top of it. So you can see how I have them crisscross, like that. And then I'm going to, see this one goes on the top, and this one's on the bottom. Let me get my hands out of the way. On the bottom. So I'm going to take the one that's on the bottom, and I'm going to grab this end and go through the other loop. And you can kind of see how it's going to make that nice little knot there. And then you want to tighten it so that way it's not so big. Now when you tighten it, I found it helps if you hold close to the knot versus way far out at the ends. It's less likely to tear if you hold closer. You want to just gently cinch it up. You can even kind of grab there if you need to and kind of pull on the knot itself. Just kind of gently cinch it up. And there you go. Now your Plarn is flat fastened together, and you've got, and now it's getting longer. And so you just use the same process to connect the next loop. So lay a loop down, this one goes over it, pick up this end, pull it through. Now when you do your second one, you want to make sure that you don't have the knot coming like on the side of the bag. You want to make sure that the knots are across from each other, or else your Plarn will be really uneven. So when you go to tighten your knot, make sure that this bag that already has a knot in the one end is nice and smooth. And then just gently cinch it up like we did before. I'll show you one more. I'm just going to kind of run it through here and out the loop. Now I'm going to show you something else here. Let's say we get this one attached, it's looking awesome, and then suddenly we're pulling on it and doink. Okay, now obviously you saw that I purposely pulled that out, but I'm doing that as an example. So what I do, as I said earlier, is I just take these and I tie them together. You can either do a knot like this and then you tie them again, or you can do kind of, I guess it would be like an overhand knot, where you hold both ends together and then just loop them both through. I don't know that I really have a preference for which way I knot it. I've kind of been doing it different ways each time. And just tighten it up. If you want, you can trim the tail here. Put that to the side. And there you go. Now that little tear, you don't have to waste a loop. That's what I love about making Plarn. Well, I keep saying that's what I love. There's a lot of things I love about making Plarn. I'm super excited with this. But it's really easy to reuse any little part that you have. And so once you get a bunch of these together, you now have your Plarn. And if you want, you can just kind of wind it into a ball. I'm just going to wrap it around my fingers because I don't really have enough to actually make a ball. And then you can start crocheting with it, or knitting with it if you knit. But now you have some Plarn. So here we are with our awesome Plarn. Check it out. And you might be wondering, what do you make with Plarn? Because it is, it's still plastic bags. So plastic bags, you're not really going to make like clothing out of it or anything. But this is great. It's a nice durable material, and it's also great for things that are outdoors. So what I'm going to be making out of some Plarn, and I'll share some patterns on this, is I'm going to be making some bags, which is kind of funny because it's like you cut up a million of these bags to make a bag. But this bag that I'll be making will be a lot more durable, and will have some more character than just the grocery store bags that you get. But it's great because, like, if you saw my video where my family was out on the boat and then I was crocheting on the side of the road, it's great. I'm going to make some bags, and I'll probably use this on the boat because when you're out on a lake, you kind of are surrounded by water and you get wet. And so Plarn is great because you can get it wet and it's not a big deal. It won't really absorb it. And you don't have to worry about, like, oh no, what if the bag blows off the boat and I lose it. It's not, you know, the end of the world if I bought some like fancy designer bag. You can also make things like coasters or placemats. I actually have an idea that I'm thinking through, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to make this work, but I almost feel like I could make an outdoor swing of some sort from Plarn, which I'm thinking would probably take a lot of Plarn, and I'd probably have to make it a lot thicker than this to make it strong enough for someone to sit on, but I think that'd be kind of cool because it'd be a good durable outdoor material that can get wet easily. So I don't know, we'll see. I don't know that I'll actually end up making that. If I do, I'll definitely keep you guys posted. So in my next video, I'm going to cover two things. I'm going to cover how to spin the Plarn, and I'm also going to talk about what you can do with all these handles and scraps that we have left over. But until next time, this has been Tutorial Tuesday, and comment below and tell me what are you going to make with your Plarn. So until next time, happy crafting!